Now, news at the tail end of last week in relation to some trial rules that are being tried out by Camogie in the National League. We already knew the ladies' football had a couple flagged. These seem to have come a little bit by surprise. We'll go through them with Anne-Marie McGann on that. Just on that first point, Anne-Marie, I mean, I don't know about you, but the first I heard of this even being whispered was when the press release came out from the Camogie Association. Had this made its way around any of your circles before it became public?
To be honest, not really, Derek. I think the first I saw of it was on RT News on their website. You know that they'd given a brief kind of outline of what was coming down the line for the league. But look, I suppose they've obviously been looking at I suppose the structure of the game, and look, you have to be willing to experiment, I suppose, and willing to change, and wherever that needs to be. And look, the trial will show, I suppose, whether these rules during the league will be a positive or negative, but I suppose you can't down anyone who wants to try new things and speed up the game and see how it's going. But I think it's been a bit of a surprise to a few people coming out in the last week.
Yeah, just to run through a few of them, I think ones that have caught the eye is the sideline from the hand inside your own 45-metre line. That can now get the game going that little bit quicker. If a game has passed the 30-minute mark, unless it's an obvious substitution or a concussion issue, no substitution is allowed to be made there. I suppose that's maybe trying cut lads slowing down the game or managing the game in injury time, which again I suppose is a positive one. And also then they've kind of followed the FRC rule insofar as the dissent has come in for both on-field and indeed off-field as well. So what jumps out to you, or what's your initial reaction on them?
I suppose if we're starting there with the dissent, I suppose, it's kind of a contentious one because it's really at maybe the discretion of the referee, what's considered to be dissent. You're not going to hurt a referee's feelings, or a referee shouldn't have their feelings hurt if they're being questioned about certain things. But I can see that sometimes it has gone over the line a small bit. But if you're a good ref, you're not going to take that to heart, and you're just going to get on with the game. And I can see that they're trying to cut out that dissent, and I suppose the bit of argy-bargy between, I would say, more so mentors, maybe at the halftime mark and maybe after the game, rather than the players, because I think during the game a player has responsibility to ask or to even check in with the referee, because it's been spoken about in hurling how hard it is to get in, or even football, to get in a message to your own players, let alone get in and ask a question to a referee. So I think a player has a responsibility to ask that question as to why a free is being given. But maybe they're just trying to kind of cut out that chit chat at the halftime mark, I suppose, basically when mentors are making a beeline for a referee. But I don't think it's going to have that much of a major change on things. The referee has an ability to report anyone, I suppose, after a game, and there's consequences in place for that should it appear on a referee's report. So it'll come down to the referee and their mannerism and how they want to deal with people. And I think if you're a good referee, you'll take a certain amount of it on the chin. But I can see what the Camogie Association are trying to do. Cut out that beeline at half time, question a referee or giving them that kind of bit of slack. I'm a little bit miffed, I suppose, about the sideline puck. I can see, I suppose, the positives of it in terms of speeding up the game, and trying to get the ball back in play a bit quicker, or getting someone who has a decent slap of a sliotar to clear their lines. But I feel it's an art, to defend the sideline and, keep the ball in your own half. And now it's going to travel probably 50 metres to the opposite side of the field. But I suppose I was a bit dubious about taking the 45 inside the 45, the free from the hand, and that probably has worked out. So maybe they're trying to do kind of a little bit of an alteration on this now with the sideline pucks. But it'll be interesting to see. Anyone that has an ability, I suppose, to give a good hit on a sliotar will be able to clear their lines and get it down the opposite end of the field. Whereas I like to see sometimes when there was a sideline, you still had an opportunity to keep the ball in your own 45, within your own 45, and get an attack on. Whereas now it's going to be a case of clear lines at all cost and get the ball over the line. Hopefully you'll get the sideline and you'll get the pressure off your backs for a while. So look, it's there to be trialled, and I suppose the league will open up, I suppose, a number of positives and negatives to what's going to go on there. But the 30-metre mark, I suppose, look, that's a fine enough one. I actually had a bigger issue with the charging rule, I suppose, in all the commentaries or anything that we've ever done, and I suppose across nationally and everything like that. That charging rule, always seems to be contentious in Camogie, and it's very hard if you're a player coming out and you're trying to clear your lines and get the ball away, and you meet a player face on. And I think if you're a defender, you're standing there, put your arms out, and they run into you, it's a free automatically. I think those ones are really clear cut. But I have to say the game has sped up so much. The game has become way more physical. I think it should be allowed to a certain extent that if you hit onto a player, or that you bang into them, and look, if they fall back, they fall back. I think it's very much in the context of that moment, whereas a clear barge straight into them, making no attempt to go around them, is very clear. But it's always something that comes up. I'd say it comes up at least 2 or 3 times in any commentary, in any kind of corner of the country, about whether it's a charge or it's not a charge. And again, it comes down to interpretation from a referee. But I think we wanted to bring in the physicality into the game. We want the game sped up. So I think that's going to be a hard one for a referee to keep control of and try and put their stamp on it. But look, as I said, you have to be willing to experiment. They're trying to experiment. They're falling into line with the helmet rule and things like that. With the GAA, but it'll just depend now on how teams, I suppose, adapt it and get on with that over the course of the league. I have seen over the years maybe where mentors or managements would bring on a player, I suppose, at the 30-minute mark or in the extra time to try and slow that down. But also I've seen over the years where managements now have been using it to make a sub, and now you have a player on the field who maybe is not being picked up quickly, and you're going to get your own puck out to them, and you're in the dying minutes of the game, and you'll secure your puck out and hopefully pass down a bit more time. But having said that, if somebody is injured, if somebody goes down with cramp, if something happens, they will have to be substituted. So it's kind of a here nor there kind of kind of a rule, because if they're making a sub, a referee has to add on the time anyway. So look, that one probably isn't going to make much of a difference if the referee was, I suppose, sticking to the time of the game.
And I suppose the more than we saw with the ladies football a couple of weeks ago as well, this is just a trial for the league. There will be reassessing of it afterwards, and the more than we saw with the FRC tweaking where needed, and ultimately hopefully coming up with the right approach to it. And in fairness to Camogie, even that free from the hand, the changes to the physicality, all that, they haven't been slow to try and change the game, and there's no doubt it has improved hugely as a product because of it.
No, it has. And as I said, I was definitely, when that rule came out about taking the free from inside your own 45 from your hand, I was a little bit like, you're kind of demeaning the whole free taking thing. You're kind of putting it, it almost felt to me, and no disrespect to Go Games or anything, I felt like it was a bit of a childish kind of move that, a back wasn't able to take their own free or things like that. But it has definitely sped up the game, and it has made an improvement on it. And I think that's what Camogie are trying to do. And look, the trial run for the league will, I'm sure, show up its flaws and its pros, but at least they're willing to look at it, and they're willing to change a few things, and that's all you can ask from a Camogie association.